Hey everybody, and welcome again to Weekly Flow. Today we are going to be talking about counting the money. Now, for a lot of you, and maybe even me in my past, who knows, maybe even me in my future, counting the money can be a little bit uncomfortable. It's something that is really critical, and then also can easily be set aside. And so when we're talking about counting the money, we're talking about how to handle all things money, whether it's a P&L for your business, personal budget for the family, understanding about savings and the importance of savings, and then our overall net worth. So it's very easy to not pay attention to the money, but it's so important to pay attention to the money. It's kind of a big deal. And so what do most people do? This is it. It was hard to get these guys to all put their heads in the sand, by the way. This shot took about an hour because they kept saying, I can't breathe. And then, anyway, we got it all figured out. But that is how we sometimes look at money, right? Especially in our business where we don't have an exact amount of money coming in every week or month. It's coming and going. And sometimes it's like, I just got to pay all my bills and I need a deal to come through. Or you get a whole bunch of money and you don't really know what to do with it. And you think you're rich because you have all this money, but you're really not rich because you haven't looked at all of your expenses or where your savings is, or the fact that you may not get that same check the following month. So at the end of this class, you'll know the importance of counting the money and how to do it. And the other thing is that, having a sense of where your money is at, what your net worth is, what your expenses are, how much money you actually make is part of being in flow. There's a mindset of comfort when you at least know what's going on with your money, not only today's money, but also your future money. And it creates a peace of mind. So first of all, just super basic stuff. How do you figure out what your net worth is? And it's very simply your assets minus your liabilities. Why is this an important number? Well, this is a good way to track where you're at. And if you are not creating more net worth, it's going to be challenging as you get older to have more freedom when how much you work as you get closer to Kevin. I think Kevin and I both are kind of like, I don't really want to retire per se, but I want to have options, right? And the higher my net worth is, the more options I have. If I have zero net worth by the time I get to a certain age and I don't want to do real estate anymore, then I guess I'm going to be at the Walmart greeting people or whatever. Be doing something. So we want to be paying.
Do you need a shopping cart today, sir?
Yeah, exactly. So we definitely want to pay attention to this net worth number. And this is something that's fairly easy to figure out, and you can track it. And what it does is it kind of makes it fun to be, it gives you something to look at and go, oh, okay, I'm building.
Yeah, so, it's so easy when we're younger to say, oh, I've got plenty of time. And the issue is that we don't have plenty of time. All of a sudden you get to that point that you start thinking about, how am I going to retire or slow down or whatever. And it's those people that started thinking about that in their 20s and have been doing it the whole way along, as opposed to those who start thinking about it in their 40s or 50s. So it's important, really important, to start thinking about that as early as possible, like today, if you're not already doing it.
Yeah, and it's super common for us as humans it's hard to identify with our future self, right? It's because our present self is so present, right? Our daily, where we're at right now seems way more important than the person that we can't even picture. And Kevin, I didn't tell you this, but I was reading a book the other day. No, it was a podcast, and they were talking about, you can go on to, and I haven't done this yet, but I intend to do this. You can go on to, there's a few different websites where you go on and you can create a future picture of yourself. Now, your first thought may be, I don't really want to know what I'm going to look like in the future. But what it is it's a way to give a face to yourself in the future, and that you want to be doing things for that person. And you kind of take that picture and you put it somewhere where you're going to see it regularly, so that you are identifying with that person who is you in the future, whether it's how you're treating your body and what you're eating, what kind of physical activity you're including in your life, or what kind of money that you're putting away for yourself, that you can identify with that future self. So that's a little trick that you could use if you're having a hard time with paying attention to that future self.
It's a great idea.
So assets include, of course, bank accounts, any kind of savings accounts, 401ks, your house, any investment properties you might have, or anything that's really a quantifiable asset, right? And then liabilities or any debt. So consumer debt, credit cards, car loan, mortgage debt, college debt, any other kind of debt, the $100,000 that you borrowed from a guy named Guido, whatever it is, that all goes into that's a liability. And then you just basically take the two and you do the math. And you hopefully there's more assets than there are liabilities. If there isn't, it's okay. It's not too late. The good news of this whole thing is you're in the real estate business. You can get really healthy really quick in the real estate business, believe me. But really it's about knowing what those numbers are. Now, do you track your personal and business expenses? What about your savings? Are you tracking these things? And, tracking is so important because what happens for me anyway, when I'm not tracking is I have this kind of fantasy in my head of where things are at. I think I'm doing pretty good, or gosh, I'm doing horribly. And if it's all in my head, it's not even fact-based. It's more emotional based. And so knowing the numbers and tracking them is the very first step in getting yourself into the right frame of mind. And it's okay if it turns out that when you track the numbers, you don't have a net worth, or maybe your net worth is negative. Again, it's okay to get out, but at least you know what you're working towards, right? And on the other hand, if you have a net worth, it's important to keep trying to build that. Okay. Do you know what your survival number is? Now, the survival number is what your personal household requires in income to pay all of your minimum bills, all of your minimum expenses, feeding the family, all the minimum stuff. We really, if you don't know what that number is, and I'm going to show you mine in a minute, or mine from a couple of years ago that I have, but you really need to know what that survival number is, especially in our business when we don't know when money is coming or going. It's important to know what that minimum number is. And so, and by the way, we're going to have charts that you can fill out to help you go through all this stuff too. What about your survival number for business? So for those of you who have a team, that means you have staff. That means that you have payroll. So that's a business expense. You might have regular advertising, or you may have an office expense. Whatever your expenses are, there's also a survival number for that. If you hopefully have a corporation that you're running your business expenses through, that you can run some of your personal expenses through the business. All of that is stuff that you want to be able to keep track of. And all of this gives you a better sense of, especially if you don't have staff or employees, to give you the comfort level of, can I afford a who, right? Now, for those of you, this is your first quarter with Flowcademy. Last quarter, we read a book called Who Not How. The short version of that is that we want to be focused on and doing the things that we're best at, Kevin and I talk about this all the time, which for you should be negotiating deals, cultivating relationships, and managing your team. For a lot of you, the managing the team part is still you, because you have no who's, but we want to be accumulating who's in our life. And a who is somebody who can take something off your plate that you should be paying somebody else to do, that would be better at it, more efficient, and so forth. And with the budget and knowing what your survival number is in your business, it gives you a sense of who you can pay and how much you can pay them as well. So you should, in a perfect world, you should always have 3 times your survival number saved, both for personal and for business. So if your survival number is $10,000 a month, you should have $30,000 earmarked in a savings account, so that if you get lean times where you just don't do a deal for 1, 2, or 3 months, that you don't have to panic, right? That you don't get commission breath when you're talking to somebody because you're so worried because you need deals going on. And the reason we mention this, again, because it's very typical for realtors to have a big check and think that they've got a lot of money. And instead of making sure they have their survival number, they go buy a new Tesla, right, Kevin?
Thanks for that.
Kevin's getting a new Tesla on Sunday delivered. It's not because he got a big check. It's because he has earned his Tesla. But the point is that we want to be mindful about how we're taking care of our money. And it's really easy to have a big month, think you have a bunch of money, and forget about the fact that you may not have that same deal come through the following month. Okay. So are you tracking your personal and business expenses? And again, like I've been talking about, this helps you keep your financial emotions in check. If you're making a lot of money one month and not the next, this is a roller coaster. If you're doing the daily navigator, if you're doing the weekly navigator, a lot of that is to greatly reduce or eliminate the roller coaster ride so you have a more predictable income, by the way. But if you don't have that, even if you have that, there's still going to be, I had a couple years ago where I had two months where I didn't do any deals, or maybe it was even 3 months. And it wasn't because I wasn't doing the things I was supposed to do. It was just circumstantially, just the way it worked out. The houses weren't available. I had plenty of leads, but the circumstances were dictating that I didn't get any revenue. Luckily, I had the savings, and so I could get through, and I made it through okay. But anyway, okay. So a couple of tracking tools. If you don't have a P&L, that means profit and loss. We're going to give you one that you can use. It's really simple, and it keeps you keep track of the money. Also, having a personal budget. What I want to just say, first of all, too, that I hate doing all of these things. I hate tracking money. I hate paying attention to my money. I do not like having a P&L, and I definitely do not even like the word budget. Okay. So all these things were things that I had to learn and become comfortable with. And I actually really do appreciate them now, but it was not like, this is great, I'm excited. It was like, I hate this stuff. So if you're feeling that way, it's totally okay and understandable. All right. So here is I need to move where my peoples are here so I can look at this. Okay. So here, this is, what is this? This is January 2019. This is the P&L from back then that I just grabbed for me. So this is for the business. And if you can see it, upper left-hand corner is where I start. And we've got section 1 is just overall expenses, right? So it's broken into office expenses, wages, and it keeps going down, miscellaneous expenses, personal expenses, and so forth. So that whole left-hand side is all about expenses and kind of breaking them down. So you can see that the number one expense that I have in my office expenses was, at the time, this is who I was paying to be coached. It was $2,750 a month. Then I had some Yelp advertising. You can see I canceled it as well. I wasn't happy with it, but I did pay that bill. Break breads mean those are the people that I had meals with, right? Coffee, breakfast, lunch. It could have been, 2 or 3 people at once, or one, face to face, whatever. But I added up all of my lunches and meals that month, and it was broke down to $473. I actually had realtor dues that month. I had some recurring office expenses that we just put all into one lump sum. So in other words, you don't have to break down every single one of them. But those are things like, I'm trying to think of what they might be, like, subscriptions to technology or whatever it is. There were some MLS dues because it was the beginning of the year. And then my phone expense is about $350 a month. I had an assistant at the time who, that's her payroll for that month. That includes not only her costs, but also all the taxes that I paid on top of that. By the way, if you do hire somebody, it's best to, hire a company to keep track of writing your checks, so you don't have to worry about all that, making sure all your employee payroll tax gets paid and all that. There was some miscellaneous expenses, Rotary office supplies, then some personal expenses that get run through the business. So my medical insurance at the time was $1,450 a month, and so forth. So we go through that. That's all my monthly number was $11,106, which is right in line with what my typical survival number was at the time. And then I didn't have any section 2 income. That might be if I had a spouse that brought in money, I would put it in here. If I had rental properties, it would go there. It says things like title company and referral fees would go in there. some states allow you to get referral fees from title companies. We don't have that obviously here. But the point is, it's everything outside of real estate would go into that Section 2 income there. And then my Section 3 from my pay log, I'll show you my pay log in a minute. I think I have one on here. But for that month of January, my incoming revenue was just under 70,000. And it kind of breaks down. It was 6 units, about 11,000 per unit. And so then all of that gets dropped down to Section 4 here, where we subtract out the expenses for the business. So my taxable income would be 58,000. And then my total actual income would be 58, right? Because we're assuming a 25% rate of my total revenue would be 58,000 minus the expenses. And then 25% of that is 14,000. So that gets set aside for taxes. And my actual spendable money for that month is 43,530. You can see that so I had the profit here of minus 11. I don't know why I got that wrong on there. Paid to the owner 58,000 for that month. And then we go to the next slide. So that was all business. This is all personal. So personal family budget, and I won't go through all these numbers again, but because that's probably boring as hell now that I'm thinking of it. But you can see that on the left, I've got all of the typical expenses that I have. The row number 2 is my survival number. You can see it says down here, my survival number. So these are the things that I have to pay every month. And then this particular month is what I actually paid, because I actually made more than that. So I paid a little bit extra on some of my expenses, not too much, but then I put 25 grand into savings. So that's why these two numbers don't add up. What I put into savings plus a little bit of extra expenses, extra payments to some of my debt is 26,000. And then all that adds up to here. If I had a month where I didn't make enough money, I might have to borrow from my savings to pay these bills. And then you would see a negative number right here. The point is that we're basically paying attention to the money as it happens. I think it's so common for us to focus on GCI and our gross commission income. And you go, I had 100,000 GCI, or I had 300,000 GCI, or I had 500,000 GCI. But if you don't figure into that what your expenses were to make that GCI, then it's not really a number, right? What's more important is how much money did you pay taxes on? Because that's your revenue minus your expenses. Okay, so last thing around this is the ideal spending formula should look something like this. So for every dollar that comes in, ideally 10% of that would go to just giving, right? Whether that's something you do for church or just for charities or giving it away to your friends or whatever, but something where you are giving away from your generosity. Now, if you're in a place where that's not possible, then that shouldn't be in there necessarily. But you also want to figure in 25 cents out of every dollar is going to go to taxes one way or the other. It might be higher than that. It kind of depends on what your expenses are. But that's a good basis to get started with. And 20% should be going to savings. So that, again, for that future self, that future picture of yourself, so that out of every dollar you make, you should be thinking about, well, I didn't really make $1. I have 45 cents out of that dollar to spend on my everyday stuff. So that's, again, a mindset for a lot of people that's different than the way you may be looking at it. Okay. So we're at that favorite part of our thing where we talk about what are the roadblocks going to be, and I can think of a few, but it seems like the same theme always comes up, which is this is new. I don't like this idea. I've never done this before. This makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to try these new things. So those are going to be the typical roadblocks. When we get into the questions, I really would like to talk to. I want to hear from you about what are the roadblocks do you think they're going to be. But I think, number one, trying something new. Number two, it may have looked like that was a lot of work. And the reality is, it is a fair amount of work. A lot of times we're telling you, like, for example, The daily navigator shouldn't be a lot of work. It's a 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening. The weekly navigator, I was just talking to one of our Flocatomates about it. She's trying to integrate it into her world, and it looks like it's too much work. But again, that really shouldn't be more than 5 minutes. This is a once a month thing that does take some effort. You're going to have to carve out a couple of hours a month to keep track of these numbers. It's not really automated. And so, I just print out my statements and I start going through them and I calculate them up. But it's so powerful to know where your money is going and to look at things and go, wait, why am I spending that much money here? It's not really giving me something. Or gosh, I thought I was spending more money over here and I have more money in my budget. So I think those are the things that will probably get in the way. Did you have any other roadblocks, Kevin, that you thought might get in the way?
The roadblock is just do it.
Yeah.
I have to say, peace of mind, it's very empowering, I think, to really understand where you are financially instead of guessing. And I went through this process many, many years ago, and I find it kind of fun actually now. And I have a bookkeeper that kind of at the end of the month, kind of goes through and makes sure that everything pencils out the way that it should, preparing me for tax day. And it's just really nice to have that information and where all of your money is going and that you're planning properly. And then there's no surprises. And if you do the survival number and you have that in the bank, you're prepared if something should happen.
Exactly. Good stuff. So homework for the day, make a decision about money. If you're already doing these things, good for you. And we're always open to hearing new tips and things. We don't want to assume that you guys aren't already doing this, but if you're not, make a decision about doing something different, even if it's little. Just like everything that we do here, it does not have to be this hard left turn to all of a sudden being, super great about your money, but do something to start going to the place where you know about what is going on. So homework for your business is to figure out what your survival number is. And what that means is going back through a few months of your statements and figuring out, where do I spend my money? Where do I have to spend my money? These are not choices. These are things that are built into your expenses, and making sure that you have an idea what that number is. And then start your P&L and start going from there. Okay, so that pretty much sums it up for counting your money. And now we're going to open it up for questions.